Okay, so let's talk again. I'm going to just briefly introduce these three current consensus documents, which we'll make reference to in the course. First off, AACE's document. It is extensive, 134 pages. As I noted, the project started in 2003. It was first published in 2007. A lot of detailed discussion of not only, what to me are all the available analysis techniques, speaks about them broadly to cover the whole world of techniques. There are different applications, and certainly sometimes with new and different names of each of these techniques, but really addresses a broad view of the ways to analyze schedules, and talks extensively about a lot of topics on which there are still a fair amount of disagreement, topics such as concurrent delay and out-of-sequence progress. But an extensive document with a lot of good information in it that continues to be updated and discussed on an ongoing basis. It includes the taxonomy, which is perhaps a little bit difficult to read here, but this document documents all of the retrospective analysis techniques, which means the project may still be ongoing, but these are the application of CPM analysis techniques looking backwards. There is another recommended practice, 52R06, that talks about prospective time impact analysis, how to take a change to a project scope or change project conditions, normally project scope, and evaluate how that change is going to impact that project going forward. That's a prospective analysis. All of these techniques are retrospective in that some change or some event has occurred, and now we want to see how that event impacted the project. The project might not be complete. Often it is and already in a dispute resolution situation, but it might simply be an event that occurred last month or 2 months ago that we want to analyze retrospectively to make sure we understand how that event impacted the project. The branches here is, two broad categories, observational and modeled techniques, and then all of the different branches off of those. Again, ultimately, we get down to 9 groups, which we call method implementation protocols, and then talk about a couple different implementations under some of those groups. You could keep going, and every individual in the world could have their own individual analysis technique. What we can discuss through this course is if there is some technique that falls completely outside of this, of these 9 groupings. We started with 8 groupings in the 2007 publication. The 9th was added in the 2009 publication as a result of an agreement that there really was a active application of that technique, which again we'll discuss later in this course. But under these groupings, I do think fairly describe all available analysis techniques, although there are always new techniques coming forth from individuals. To date, my view of those techniques has been that they fit under one of these groups, or more often, if it's something new, are a hybrid of some of these existing techniques, but their approaches are normally covered by a lot of what we see here. There are probably some techniques that we could talk about in terms of like the stochastic modeling that would be outside of this taxonomy, but we really don't see a lot of that in terms of delay analysis, because again, once the project is being looked at retrospectively, there's not a lot of room for stochastic modeling of the past, because the past is largely known, at least if it's been documented. Before AACE published their document, we have the Stl document, which first came out in 2002. I did say again that the 2017 version really was revised extensively, including a lot of the techniques that AACE had spoken about. Just a very quick comparison, and these two tables don't need to be read to be compared. Just that this was the small group of forensic methods that were documented in 2002. Or in the 2002 version of the delay and disruption protocol. And then in 2017, this table was expanded, again using common names, but brought in a lot of the analysis techniques that had been talked about by AACE and this idea of application prospectively or retrospectively. STL actually talks about prospectively, contemporaneously, or retrospectively in terms of when some of these techniques can be applied. But you can see the level of development in terms of there's not a listing of 9 here, but a broad expansion of what's documented in the STL protocol after that one update that was made in 2017. The recent document, and I worked on this one, a group that started to form by some of the experts that had dissented or documented criticisms of the AACE initial publication, ultimately did form a group under the Construction Institute of the American Society of Civil Engineers and published a document recently, 2017, talking about schedule delay analysis. This document contains 35 guidelines. Again, does not explicitly endorse or reject any specific method of analysis, but arguably certain analysis techniques don't follow some of the 35 guidelines. Just a brief listing of the topics addressed by this document. You would see these topics also addressed by AACE. I did in 2018 a detailed comparison of the guidelines from the American Society of Civil Engineers and the guidelines from AACE International. And there is very broad consensus between the documents, in my opinion. Certainly, as you get into the detailed text, of course, there are differences. With AACE having a 134-page document, they did not reproduce that. But on the broad guidelines themselves, I would argue that there is far more consensus than there is difference. There's not universal agreement on how to address every single potential nuance of each one of these issues. But again, in my opinion, and you can pull, or I can provide that 2018 detailed comparison paper as a reference. There's broad agreement between the two documents, far more agreement than there is disagreement in my opinion, and I worked on both documents.